What's up everyone, welcome to this video. In this video I'm going to be giving my thoughts and review of Onward, the latest Pixar film. No, I did not just watch this movie within the last few days. I actually watched this movie back when it came out, the weekend it came out, March the 6th, the weekend of March the 6th, back when the world was actually still functioning normally and you can go to the movies without any problems or just go out into the world without any problems. But after seeing the movie, I just never had any really just sort of inclination to put out a video review for it. But within the last week or so, just because I've just been cooped up in my house, not being able to go anywhere, I just figured, you know what, why not? Let me go ahead and put this review out there just because this movie might end up being on Disney Plus pretty soon, so people might be watching it that way. And yeah, I'm basically bored out of my mind, so here I go putting my review out for this movie right here. So for people who don't know, this is the latest Pixar film. Obviously when people see Pixar, they're just like, God damn, I gotta go see this. And for those who have not seen the trailers, this movie involves a story in which the fantasy world ends up being sort of like a suburban, real kind of like type world and stuff like that. Story involves two elves going on a quest after they sort of bring back their father, but only half of their father, so they have to go on a quest to sort of get this stone to sort of bring back the whole rest of their father who has passed away, but right now they only got like his legs and shit like that. Kind of a weird sort of gimmick story, but that's what it is sort of right there. And when I'm talking about gimmicks, this whole movie sort of revolves around the gimmick of having this sort of fantasy world being sort of like a real world kind of setting. You know, the whole thing, you got like unicorns or kind of like stray cats and stuff like that. Fantasy elements are just all over the place. You got people living in like giant mushrooms and stuff like that. So like, you get it, fantasy all around the place. And the problem here is that this movie relies really hard on that gimmick. Like everything in the world is in the movie is centered around that gimmick. And for me, the problem was that the fact that the stuff they do as a kid's film, the stuff they do with this gimmick really just is not all that funny. You know, you got stuff that's just like little pixies or like these hardcore bikers. You got fat centaurs and, you know, comedy is subjective and stuff like that. But for me, I just didn't really find it all that funny. It was just all like, well, all right, I'm really waiting for the story to really sort of kick in. And I sort of feared this going in just because I didn't think the trailers for this movie were all that funny. And so I wasn't surprised that most of the stuff in the movie was just like, well, all right, let's get on with the story then. And the problem is the whole sort of story and sort of gimmick behind this movie and this world is just so familiar. It's something that we've seen in sort of a combination of a couple of films, Zootopia and another Pixar film, The Good Dinosaur. When it comes to Zootopia, the obvious gimmick is sort of having this sort of real world being populated by sort of a gimmick. With this movie, it's sort of fantasy elements. For Zootopia is obviously sort of animals and stuff like that. And it sort of copies off The Good Dinosaur in a way too, just in the fact that in The Good Dinosaur, the whole gimmick was all like, hey, what if sort of the dinosaurs survived into sort of like our times and became like sort of weird ass farmers or some shit like that. This movie is the same kind of thing. It's like, hey, what if sort of fantasy elements survived into sort of our times? And so you had sort of like a real world setting and stuff like that. Zootopia obviously did this gimmick a whole lot better. But people will compare the gimmick saying, why did the gimmick in Zootopia work? Well, at least in Zootopia, they sort of dealt with themes of sort of like racism, real world prejudices and stuff like that. So it ended up working out kind of well like that. This movie takes sort of like the basic approach is to say, hey, let's just use this fantasy stuff just to tell jokes and stuff like that. And really, for sort of an original non-sequel Pixar film, the story just really didn't feel all that inspired. Now, I've been talking about the bad stuff about this movie right here, as in I sort of like hated it, but that's not true. This actually wasn't that bad of a movie. For one, the voice acting was actually good. You got Tom Holland and you got Chris Pratt as sort of the two brothers in this film, the leads, and they do a good job. I mean, they're basically playing their MCU characters, but regardless, they still did a good job with their roles right there. The best part of the movie definitely is the moments between the brothers and the dad. The dad in this movie, when they bring him back, they only bring back his bottom torso. So he's just like all the way up to like his torso. He's just legs is basically all it is. So they're basically interacting with their father, who's only just a pair of legs right now there, but he can still hear them and stuff like that. And the stuff that they do with him when they're actually talking to their father like that is actually kind of sweet stuff. It invokes evokes those sort of feelings you feel in sort of Up and Coco, those sort of like family bonding moments where you're just like, oh man, that's the kind of feeling you want to feel in these Pixar movies right there. Those best moments in Up and Coco, yeah. Now this movie doesn't quite reach those levels. I mean, Up and Coco are like two of the best Pixar films of all time, and this movie doesn't invoke those kind of emotions, but for what they do is still solid, especially the stuff between Ian and his dad. Ian is the one played by Tom Holland. That stuff was great. I just wish they had more of it. So because more of the movie was focused on the relationship between them and their dad, and not just going all over the place with these unfunny fantasy gimmicks, then this movie would have connected a lot better emotionally. As it is, it didn't quite reach that level. And in all honesty, I really did not like the way they ended the story between Ian and his dad. I was just like, wait a minute, after all the shit this kid goes through, you gonna end his story like that? I was just like, really? Just the stuff between him and his dad at the end? I was like, that ain't right. Y'all shouldn't have done him like that. Not gonna give any spoilers, but quite frankly, I wasn't that big a fan of it, and people that I've talked to that actually did like the movie a lot more than I did, they didn't quite like it either, that element right there. So there is that, but overall the emotion of the movie was there in moments. I just wish there was more of it. Overall, this was not that a bad movie by any stretches. I think it was a solid movie overall, but admittedly it was just a mediocre Pixar film. And the problem with Pixar, man, is that Pixar, you can have that brand name and it gets people excited, like, ooh, Pixar, man, that's your name brand recognition. People that made Toy Story, people made Incredibles, all that great shit. But then it's all like, oh shit, man, Pixar. It's all like, man, I got high expectations. And unfortunately, I just thought, like I said, this was kind of like a mediocre Pixar film by sort of their real upper tier standards. Just my opinion personally. So I'm gonna end up giving this movie a 6.5 out of 10. Admittedly, I'm kind of tough to impress, but oh well, it is what it is. Something else that definitely was not in this movie's favor is how amazing another movie looks, how amazing Soul looks. That's the other Pixar film that is supposedly slated to release in June. We'll see if it reaches that. But yeah, the trailers for that are already out, and that movie looks like the movie that's all like, god damn. That looks like the movie that's going to reach those levels of sort of like the best Pixar movies, like Up, like Inside Out. It just has that sort of mature story kind of feeling to where it's all like, this just looks really impressive. Plus, it's the only Pixar film that we've seen that has a black guy as the main character. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So yeah, Soul definitely looks amazing. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of people aren't going to have the chance to see this in theaters, just with the whole virus pandemic out there in theaters. It's just like, people are not going. Opening weekend, the movie did 39 million. Not great for a Pixar film, but it took a major nosedive second weekend, only doing 10 million, just because that's when the whole pandemic really started and people are like, shit, I ain't going to the theaters no more. And yeah, it's like people just aren't going to see this in theaters. Maybe though, within the next week or so, maybe Disney will just cut their losses and realize, you know what, we're gonna end up losing money on this movie anyway. Why don't we just put it on Disney Plus right now? Just because, like I said, people are not going to the theaters right now. So maybe people will discover it that way. But in terms of the reaction, the movie has actually gotten sort of a decent reaction. So I think most people that see the movie will enjoy it. Just me, in terms of Pixar standards, I was just like, Pixar, not your best film right there. But what can I say? I'm tough to impress. So that'll do it for this video. I hope y'all enjoyed, and thank you for watching.